Here is the question. What are asynchronous operations? I know might be you already know the answer, but this is a very important thing for observable because observables are used to perform asynchronous operation and handle asynchronous data only. So let's just quickly understand asynchronous operations. So basically, JavaScript is a single-threaded programming language. That means if you have sent a request to web server and it have 4 tasks inside it like this, then all the 4 tasks will execute one by one. And if a task take longer time, then the next task has to wait for it. For example, here you can see first the task 1 will run and after it will be completed in 10 seconds, then only task 2 will run. This we call synchronous programming or single-threaded programming, and that is what JavaScript does. Now if you notice here, these 4 tasks will take around 28 seconds to complete. On the other hand, asynchronous programming, if task 1 is running, then in parallel other tasks can also run. Here you can see in the diagram that the whole set of 4 tasks will be completed in just 10 seconds. Sometime, depending on the CPU, it may take some more time also, but in any case, asynchronous programming is more efficient than synchronous programming. Now the question is, how to achieve asynchronous programming in asynchronous operations for JavaScript. In JavaScript, we use promises, but TypeScript is the superset and advanced version of JavaScript. So here we can use promises and also an advanced technique which is called observables. In upcoming questions, we will see what are the differences between a promise and observable and why we should use observables in Angular. If you have any queries about this question, then please ask me in the comment section. Here is a very important question. What is the difference between promise and observable? Before differences, first we should know what is common between them. Promises and observables both are used to transfer the data asynchronously in JavaScript. Otherwise, JavaScript is a single-threaded programming and it will do operations synchronously only. Now see what is the differences. Let me show you the working first. See, this is our system. Client will request data from Angular server and Angular server will request data from the API. Let's first see how the promise will work. Suppose we have huge data to be transferred from the API to the Angular server. For example, around 1 million records has to be fetched from the API. Then this server will start receiving data from the API and this will take some time to receive all the data from the API to the Angular server. Now here you notice this client is still waiting for the data to display. So there is a delay in delivering the final data which will not be there in the observable. So that will be the advantage of observable. So here in promise, once the whole data is ready, then only it will send the whole 1 million records data to the client at one go. This is the basic working of promise. A promise promises some data and provide it only when whole data is completely ready. Now to overcome that delay limitation, we have observable in Angular. Observable just stream data. Streaming data means continuously processing chunks of data. Now here you can see how it is processing the data, the chunks of data. It will not wait to collect the whole data and then it will process. So basically it will be the continuous process. Now let me give you all the differences in written because you have to tell all the differences in interview. So here is the first difference which we already discussed. Observable emit multiple values over a period of time. We also call this streaming of data. So data is streaming continuously. Whereas promise emit a single value at a time. So it will first collect the data and then only it will pass the data to the client. Next difference, observables are lazy. they are not executed until we subscribe to them using this subscribe method. For example, if you have written some code in your Angular service for Observable, which is receiving some data from some API, but if there is no component which is subscribing this data, then this observable written in the service will not even generate that data. And it is very beneficial as it will save the resources and memory of your CPU. Whereas promises are not lazy. They execute immediately after the creation. It means whether some data component subscribe them or not, it will anyway generate the data, which will take resources, memory of your CPU, and that's why it is not performance friendly. I know lazy means not good in humans, but when it's come to programming, then this lazy loading is very good. Because it will load the things when it is required, not without it. Now next difference is observables have subscriptions that are cancelable using this unsubscribe method. So a component can cancel the subscription of data sent by observable. Okay. Whereas in promises there is no such cancelable thing. So promises are not cancelable. So these are the main differences. We will see them in detail when we will code for it. If you have any queries about the differences, then please ask me in the comment section and I will be very happy to answer it, as my name is Happy. Before coding observable, let's quickly see what is the relation of RxJS and observable. What is RxJS? RxJS is nothing but the father of observable. Now here is the screenshot of definition from the RxJS website. RxJS is a library for composing asynchronous and event-based programs by using observable sequences. We already know what is asynchronous operations. It means multiple tasks in a request can run parallelly. Now event-based programs means when you are sending the request, then you should get immediate and continuous response from the server, and that is done with the help of observables. You remember streaming of data? Yes, that is the continuous response. I know it is little hard to remember this definition, so here is a simple definition. RxJS is a JavaScript library that allows us to work with asynchronous data stream with the help of observables. So this is like little much modification of the actual definition. Now why we as an Angular developer need RxJS? The answer is very simple. Because observable is introduced by RxJS library only. It is like RxJS is the father of observables. Angular has not created observables. So there is a misconception that observables are part of Angular. This is not right. We use RxJS in Angular to use observables. Similarly, plain JavaScript or any other client framework other than Angular also can use observables. So this is the next important thing. Now here RxJS stands for reactive extensions for JavaScript. Now RxJS has two main players. The observable, which streams the data, or you can say send the data in chunks, and the observer or subscriber, which receives the data which is sent by the observable, or you can say subscribe the data. So basically observer and subscriber are the same things. In upcoming questions, we will see how it works in code. So this is the short and very basic idea of RxJS. Now we will move to the next question. Here is a practical question now. What is observable? How to implement observable? If you have seen my previous questions, then you easily understand that observables are used to stream data to multiple components in Angular. In other words, you can say it emits multiple values over a period of time. Now the question is how to implement observable. It's a simple 3-step process. Import observable from RxJS library, then create observable and emit data, and the last step is subscribe the data in the component. Now let's go to the code and do some practical. Here the first step is to import observable like this in app component file. See, very simple. Second step is to create observable. This is the way we call observable function. Now what this observable will do, this will emit the data for some subscriber or observer, right? So here we will pass the observer as an argument and then we will emit the data like this. Emit meaning just releasing the data. Here first we have printed observable start message so that we know that this my observable has started, and then we just printed A, B and C in console. Now the last step is to subscribe the data. This is the way we will subscribe the observable. This subscribe is now subscribing this observable, and now we have to display the values sent or emitted by the observable. For that we will use this arrow function to print those values via this console.log method. Now let me show you the changes in the browser. Here in the console you can see the messages observable started, then printed A, B and C. So the observable is working. So basically observable sending the message and then this subscriber is receiving them and printing them here. Now one very important thing. Let's go back to the code. Here if we will not subscribe the data, then this observable will not even generate the data. Let me show you this. Let's delete this subscriber from here. Now go to the browser again. Here in the console you can see observable start message has not been printed and no ABC printed because observable will not start if there is no subscriber. So this is the basic idea when observable will work and when it will not work. Now just quickly look how the promise will work. If we go back to the code and here we just paste the promise like this. Now here we are printing a promise start message that which let us know that okay, this promise has been started. And here the subscription code should be deleted, so promise are not subscribed. Now go back to the browser again, go to the console and see the promise. See, start message, promise start message is printed. This means promise do not need subscription. Promise will anyway send the data and will start without any subscriber, whereas observable must need at least one subscriber to start them. And this is the beauty of observable, because if there are no subscribers, then why to even create or generate the message? For example, in real world, if a press is printing newspapers, but there is no one reading or subscribing these newspapers, then why to even print the newspapers? Means there is no sense, right? That is the wastage of resources and time and in technology, it is the wastage of memory, right? I hope now you have a clear understanding about the concept of observable. In upcoming questions, we will see how observables work with HttpClient to get the data from the web API, and then it will send the data to the various components where it will be subscribed. So that is the actual way of working with the observable in Angular, because this is a real scenario. Now, if you have any questions or feedback, please write in the comment section and I will be very happy to answer them. Here is a quick question. What is the role of HttpClient in Angular? You know we can create our own services in Angular, right? And then we can use those services in our project. Similarly, Angular framework also provides some built-in services which you can also use in your project. So, HttpClient is a built-in service class available in Angular. HttpClient service is present inside this package. And now the most important thing, what this service does. Very simple, this perform HTTP request. Now here are the methods this service used for getting and posting data from the web API. but we are not going into the detail of all of these methods. We will only use get method here because it is used for observables to get the data. It will be used with observables to get the data. In the upcoming question, we will see what are the steps included in getting the data with the help of HTTP client and observables. If you have any queries about this question, then please post in the comment section. What are the steps for fetching the data with HTTP client and observable? Now this is a very practical question. In 90% of projects, we will implement observable like this only. In this question, we will also use dependency injection, ng-for directive, interface and services along with HTTP client and observable. So it will give you a sense that how all these things work together. Now the output of this exercise will be like this. This is the app component with multiple students, data student, and the data will be student ID and student name, which we will fetch with the help of the HTTP client. Now let me show you the 4 steps which we will perform. First step is to set up the student data in a JSON file. Now to keep things simple, instead of web API URL, we will use a JSON file URL. Because creating a web API can be a complex and it's a separate topic, so we will cover it later. But for simplicity, here we will use just a JSON file and the URL of the JSON file. We will update the URL to the web API, then it will work with a web API also. The next step is to create a service and set up the observable and HTTP client in this service. Then in the next step, we will fetch data in app component with the help of subscribe method. Now this service or observable can be fetched in multiple components with the help of multiple subscriber. That's why we have multiple components here. Then the last step is to display the student details list with the help of ng-for directive in the component HTML template. Now let's go to the code and implement these steps in the code. First step is to set up the student data in a JSON local file. I have already created student.json data file here inside the src, then assets, then data, and then here is the student data which we will fetch. Second step is to set up the HTTP client and observable inside the service.ts file. For HTTP client, we have to open the app.module file and then import HTTP client module like this. Then we have to create a student service.ts file where we will set up HTTP client and observable. I already created this student service inside the services folder to save the time, and here is the default code of the service. Now why we need the service here? We need student service because multiple components need this student data, right? So this service will work as a reusable code, or you can say centralized place to distribute the student data to multiple components. Remember, service is just a normal TypeScript file. We only have to put service.ts as the suffix of the file name so that it will be easily recognized. Here in the student service, first I will set up the URL property. As I said earlier, for any external API, you can change the URL here, but right now we will get the data from our JSON file only. Then inside the constructor, we will inject the HTTP client and refer the HTTP client with this local variable HTTP. Now we will create a method getStudents which will fetch the data, and inside that we will use get method of HTTP client class which will return the data. In this get method, we have to pass the URL from where it will get the data. And this data will return the response in a given type, right? And what is this given type? This is of student type. For that, I already created a student.ts file and created iStudent interface inside it and also declared its two properties here, ID and name. This interface acts as a student type. Now, why we have used array here? Because we have multiple students and we have to return an array of students. Now again, if you hover over this get method, then you can see it returns an observable. So how to code to return observable is very simple. It's like this. Now remember, whether observable, iStudent, HttpClient or anything else I am using here inside this service, I have to import that also like this at the top. Otherwise it will throw an error. Okay, now our service is ready with the observable to stream or send the data to the components. Now the next step is to set up the app component TypeScript file to subscribe this data. For that, go to app.component.ts file. Here first I will create a property to receive the array, because from services get student method we are returning a student array only. Then I will inject the student service in the constructor of this app component. I already explained services and dependency injection in my previous videos. But for now, you can just think that we use dependency injection to use any service like student service in any component like we are doing here. So the service is available now in this component. Now this service is returning an observable, right? And now we have to subscribe that observable. For that, we will place this code inside ng-on init. Why ng-on init? Because this is the best lifecycle hook to attach something to a component, as the component is already created in this lifecycle hook. Now this is the syntax for subscribing the data from the observable. Now inside this subscribe method, we have to assign the data returned from the observable to this student's array. So for that, we will use the arrow function like this. So the data which we are receiving from the observable will be assigned to this student's property here. And that's it. Now the component is ready to receive the data from the service and then assign it here inside this. We are assigning it here inside the student property. Now the last step is to display this data in the HTML file. For that, we will go to the app.component.html file, and here just use ng for directive to loop through the student's class, and then through interpolation just display the student ID and then student name. Now all set. Now let's go to the browser and see the output. See, here our list of students is displayed and it's working. Now with this question, we know how to implement observable, services and HttpClient in a real-world project. Now let's quickly summarize all the steps we did. First, we created the data in the JSON file. Then we imported the HttpClient and app.module.ts file. Then we created the student service to set up observable and HttpClient to receive the data from the URL. Then we subscribed the observable in the app component TypeScript file. And at the end, we displayed the data in the app component HTML template file. This is the answer of this question. If you have any queries, then please post in the comment section and I will be very happy to answer your question. Here is a very important question. How to do HTTP error handling in Angular? The simple answer is by using catch error and throw error function from RxJS library. Now let's see in code how to implement this. Here in the student service class, we have this getStudents method and we are returning an observable of type iStudent from it, right? This get method will get the student type list from this URL and return it. Suppose I will give a wrong URL here. then it should not return the student list but should return the error, whatever error it will receive, right? Now how to catch and then send this error to the app component class and then display the error in the UI to the user. That's what we will do now. First point is to catch the error. For that, first we will use the pipe function and then the catch function inside it. For catch, we will import the catch error from RxJS at the top right like this. What the pipe function will do? The pipe function is used for chaining the function, which will then execute in sequence then. Meaning in this case, first this get method will run and then as per the pipe chain sequence, this catch error function will run. So one method and then after another method. Now when this get function will run with this incorrect URL, if there is any error, then only the execution will go inside the catch error function. If there is no error, then it will not go inside this catch error function. And when it goes inside this catch error function, then we will first receive the error in this parameter like this, and then we will throw this error to one level up by using this throw error function. Again, we have to import this throw error function from RxJS library at the top and throw one level up, meaning from where the get students method is called. That is one level up. That is the component and that is one level up. Now we will go to the app component class file. Here we have this subscribed the observable data with this subscribe method. And now we will also receiving the error if there is any error, right? For that we have to change the way we are subscribing now. First, let's comment the normal way of subscribing, comment this method, then we will call the subscribe method and inside the curly braces, we will set two properties. First is next, which means to receive the normal data from the service like this. So this is the same thing which we are doing in this commented code. And second is the error property, which is sent by the throw error function. So here we will receive the error from the observable, from the service class. Now we have to display just the error message, not the complete error, right? So this is basically the complete error object, but we have to display the error message only. For that, declare a property error message here and then assign this property a value which is error.message, basically message of this error object. And to print it in the browser, we will use the interpolation in the HTML template file. Here inside the template file, put double curly braces and write the property error message inside it. Now if I go to service class and here, if I will put the wrong URL like this, and now if I will go to the browser, we can see the actual error message in the browser because we have given the wrong URL in the service. HTTP failure response for this particular URL, wrong URL 404 not found. And we can also log this error as per our requirements. So we can do many things with this message. So this is the final answer. HTTP error handling in Angular can be done by using catch error and throw error functions from RxJS library. If you have any questions, then please ask me in the comment section and I will be very happy to answer your questions as my name is Happy.